It's extremely European to claim a period of time to be something so grand as an age of enlightenment, but whether or not you agree with everything decided upon during this time, the fact that this happened at all is fascinating. These are the top 10 most important moments of the Enlightenment movement. And hey, if you're a philosopher who thinks and therefore is, tell us about how much that means to you in the comments below. Number 10. The Gordon Riots and the letters of Ignatius Sancho. Named after the lord and possessor of the driest name known to history, George Gordon, these riots were sparked in response to new Catholic laws enacted to allow practitioners to participate in the British military, despite the anti-Catholic rules not having been enforced for around a century. Despite this, the fears of treasonous plots and general strain of the Revolutionary War led to an explosion of violence that ended up requiring military intervention, and destroyed the reputation of leader John Wilkes. The most interesting records of these riots come from the letters of the late Ignatius Sancho, an African man who was known to frequently engage in social commentary. Published posthumously, these letters are a fascinating account detailing the Gordon Riots firsthand. Number 9. The signing of the Bill of Rights in 1689. This document is easily one of the most important in British history. Penned after the disastrous rule of King James II and the closing of the English Civil War, this document was written with the hopes of ensuring the inalienable rights to the average British citizen. In particular, the Bill of Rights outlined the mistakes of King James II in a way that would outline the expectation of what a king could and could not do. What needs to be understood here is that prior to this, the king was generally viewed as a representative of God. To write something into law that limited their power was a bold statement, and the document has served as the basis for a number of constitutions alongside the current British one. Number 8. The separation of church and state. While not exactly a specific moment, this concept was a sort of continuation of what the Bill of Rights started. Primarily pushed by Thomas Jefferson and John Locke, the idea of keeping the law of governance and God apart was not one accepted easily. As a result, John Locke is generally seen as the father of liberalism with his movement. His modification of Hobbes' theory of absolutism, one that allowed the idea to come to fruition within the hearts and minds of numerous people. In particular, Locke was adamant that the state ought to avoid attempting to fold other religions into Christianity, believing that a singular religion would be more chaotic than a diverse one. Number 7. Copernicus' Celestial Spheres. An extremely important work by Nicholas Copernicus, this series of books was instrumental in laying down the law of what was believed to be the order and movement of the planets. While certainly not the first to discover this, as more and more evidence has proven, the outline found within these 6 books put it to the test of social reception. The results were poor, and resulted in a number of conflicts with the church, as the text frequently contradicted their understanding of the world under God. As a result, copies were redacted and edited to weaken their legitimacy, which led to the modern retitling of the book in a darkly humorous tone as the book nobody read. Nowadays, Copernican law is the baseline for space exploration and travel, so I think Nick can finally rest easy. Number 6. The Blazing World. Margaret Cavendish, like far too many women of the time, was bored. As a result, she penned a work of prose fiction which went on to become one of the first works of science fiction. Taking place within a utopian kingdom, the work is a landmark for feminist readings into the social concepts of gender and sexuality. Cavendish, in an afterword, detailed her motivation for writing the book, and also slyly compared its writing to the accomplishments of Julius Caesar and Alexander the Great. The themes of the book generally aim towards the goal of breaking down social divisions in the name of progress. Number 5. A vindication of the rights of women. One of the earliest direct publications of feminist literature, Mary Wollstonecraft's writing differed from Cavendish's attempts to use fiction to promote ideas ideas by taking the direct route. It was and still is a heavily controversial text, arguing against just about everything in an extremely scatterplot yet distinctly planned method. I can't pretend to agree with everything she wrote about gender and sexuality, but it would be hard to deny that her work was a landmark for the beginning of the movement to increase women's roles in Western society. Number 4. Newton's Principia Mathematica. I'm not a mathematician, but even I can figure out that this was pretty important. Setting the foundations for modern physics, this is easily Isaac Newton's greatest achievement, not simply due to its creation, but its publication. Suddenly, the understanding of the invisible wasn't just something given to those who could afford an education, it was available for anyone to consume at their leisure so long as they could read. Several editions would be published, the first becoming extremely rare to find within time. This text is credited with the beginning of the scientific revolution, and one copy of it was even carried to space in 2015. Number 3. The French Revolution. After years of economic downturn, overpopulation, and frankly bizarre rulings on the methods of taxation, the people of France were fed up with living under the rule of kings who sent them to die in wars and gave them nothing in return. While a system had been in place to attempt to appease the people, it was clear that their representation was something of a joke amongst the nobility. A number of events could be described as the straw that broke the camel's back, but it was clear that the way things were going, no one was walking away free and clear, especially when Louis XVI and his entourage were executed, the first of thousands. Rising with the proclamation of liberté, égalité, and fraternité, the people-led revolution was a bloody conflict like none other, and a perfect demonstration of what can happen when authoritarian power is taken too far. Number 2. Hobbes Leviathan. One of the most important texts in existence today, Leviathan was penned by Thomas Hobbes during the English Civil War. Exploring the place of man, government, and religion within modern society, Hobbes drew up ideas for what eventually would become the social contract theory. This theory imagined that in order to participate within a society, the individual must consent to the surrender of their freedoms that are given by the nature of their very existence, in exchange for the protection of the rest of that society. Taking this idea and applying it to just about any interaction is just fascinating, and the ways in which it's influenced modern law are too numerous to count. Suffice it to say that there will never be another work quite so important. Number 1. The Rights of Man. I lied! Yeah, Leviathan is super important, but Thomas Paine's defense of the French Revolution is my absolute favorite piece of literature from the Enlightenment period. I've pretty safely established myself as someone who's a pretty big fan of just outright revolt, and the claim that Paine makes is right up my alley. See, when Edmund Burke wrote an attack on the French Revolution, Paine countered that revolution ought to be permissible in the face of a government that does not safeguard its people's rights. This text was key in effecting changes to the newly formed United States government as well as the British rule, which were no doubt sweating at the prospect of their own age of terror. In particular, the Rights of Man is scathing towards the idea that the skill to govern a people can be inherited at all, a notion which was directly chomping at the skirts of certain other monarchs at the time. It's really sick, and might be a little bit more relevant than you'd think. Thank you so much for watching, please remember to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.